Last Friday, in episode 1, we were delighted to receive on our talk show 2 amazing and precious women of valor. We had Mrs. LOIS Burke, director and owner of Mrs. Burke Christian Academy, that is based in Arlington, Texas. Next to her, we had Dr. Corrie Harris, who is an executive director of Boook Explorers, a children literacy nonprofit based in Arlington, Texas. We had a lively and passionate discussion on the top benefit of reading to children and how reading can support them for the future. This evening, we are delighted to present the second episode of our talk show entitled How to Get Your Child to Love Reading. Stay with us to learn more. Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, good afternoon and welcome to Leadership Excellence for Women by Women.
And this insulin resistance is because
93% of juvenile victims of sexual abuse is by people they know.
Because you are illegal, you can even benefit from it because you're being a victim.
People paid for that.
the roadmap that you had to follow.
Pouvoir payer donc le crédit bancaire qu'ils vont te faire.
Non, on pensait que c'était une Américaine qui allait venir. Donc nous, on était déjà braqués.
Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, good evening and welcome to the talk show of Leadership Excellence for Women by Women. Let's have our first guest, Miss Burke, on the screen again with us. Hello, Miss Burke. Glad to be here.
Hi, good to be here.
Absolutely. And our second guest is Dr. Corrie. Can we please have her on the screen? Hello, Dr. Corrie. How are you?
Good. Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Pleasure having you both again to continue our discussion.
Yeah, excited. Love talking about reading.
Absolutely. And then I know last week Miss Burke talked a little bit about her academy, but we are talking about children and parents of children. We know that the repetition is the key. So maybe we're gonna redo that again and just give the opportunity to Miss Burke to talk a little bit more about her school. With school starting, I know many parents are looking for the best school, the greatest school for the kids. So any parent in the DFW area, this is your opportunity. I'm not trying to make a commercial for her, but just testify that, my child was going to public school for 1 year and it was a total catastrophe.
Yeah.
So he prompted me to pray and let just God lead me to Miss Burke School. So that's why I really believe in what they are doing. So we're going to let Miss Burke talk a little bit more about her school and what they have to offer for the school year that is starting and how welcoming they will be to new schooler. Miss Burke?
Amen. Well, thank you for allowing me to tell a little bit about my school. We are very excited this fall. This year, we're adding some new components to our schoolers program. We have open enrollment right now. So anybody that's looking for a change in environment and culture, we've got a really neat and unique culture here. We believe that Jesus is Lord. And we try to teach our children a little bit about his word so they can know how to access him and fight the battles that they face on a day-to-day basis. As well as our education is very, very disciplined and rock solid. Lots of meat and potatoes. We have grades kindergarten through 6th grade, and we are open to take any students. And we're very excited about the new year. We've added some new things, and we're thinking it's going to be a really good year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burke. And we will make sure to have all the information for the school at the top in the description of the video. So whoever would like to get in touch with her can just call, visit the school, and then just get their kids rolling for next year. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And Dr. Corrie, do you think that kids are natural born readers?
To some extent, I think that's probably true. There's some kids that are more naturally inclined towards that way, and reading certainly comes easier. But I think a lot of it is the culture, the environment that the kids are in. If there's a family culture where reading is something important, and if there's a school culture where, reading is something fun and important, something we value, then I think kids, they may feel like it's natural that they love reading, but a lot of it is the culture around them. That's kind of creating the atmosphere for them to be a natural reader.
Yeah. So if I understand, technically you're saying that if a child is in a family where parents don't like to read, the probability for that child to love reading is none to 0.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, my mom doesn't like reading. I love reading. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. But I would say that, if your parents don't value reading, there's not going to be books in the home. So it's going to be very hard for you to practice reading. And, if you're not read to and you don't have that connection with love and intimacy in books, you're going to be much less likely to love reading and love books.
Yeah. It makes sense. It definitely makes sense. My next question is going to be for Miss Burke. Why do many kids prefer to watch tablets rather than reading? Yeah, I know that's a big thing in the United States.
Well, that is a question. A tablet it's a digital drug. So naturally, when you see the lights and the movement, it's much more of a draw, but it's much more of an addictive drug. You don't have to think when you're watching an iPad or you're playing on an iPad. The thoughts are like they're not in the front portion of your brain. It interferes with your natural sleep, your natural creativity, because it's all there it does it all for you. So you don't really have to exercise your brain. And so unfortunately, kids get addicted to it at a young age. And it's breaking them is kind of like breaking a drug habit. You're going to go through screaming and tantrums and things like that because it's highly, highly addictive. But it doesn't promote thinking. It doesn't promote brain movement. As a matter of fact, there was a study that came out that showed MRIs were showing that kids that watched more than an hour of an iPad or something online, their brain developed much slower.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I get that it's easy, it's so accessible, and
not only accessible, Miss Burke, and I see Dr. Corrie just nodding, so I will give her the opportunity to say something. But it's also, I think, it's an easy escape to parents. Just like,
yes,
here's an iPad, and leave me alone.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So some of our viewers might think like, we are a little bit rude in our expression, but I think we really need to be rude today, if I could say that. But we have to tell the truth today. We have to break it down for parents to understand.
Yes.
It seems like, and I've seen that, some parents, even for Christmas, offering an iPad to a baby.
Yes. They give them that young.
I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to cut you, but
it takes away the intentionality of parenting. The term parenting means something. It means that you are intentionally teaching this human, and the iPad takes that away. Like it just completely detaches. As a matter of fact, it separates a parent and their child. Like the bonding, it actually separates some of the bonding. And it makes it very difficult for them to bond, period, not with just the parent, but with anyone, depending on how much screen time that they're allowed to have, can really, really affect their ability to even bond with humans.
Wow.
So it is a really, really detrimental thing. And I get that it's accessible and it's easy, but if we're not being intentional about our parenting and parenting intentionally, we're losing the battle.
Wow. That's pretty scary. Dr. Corrie, would you like to add something to what Dr. Miss Burke just said?
Yeah. I think, you want to start with the end in mind. So I taught at university before I transitioned into working with kiddos. And, you know, I had university students that behaved a lot more like 5-year-olds. And so, and I think a lot of that is probably, they were the first generation that grew up with screens.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think for parents, you're going to pay either now or later. But if you pay later, then you're accumulating a lot of interest that you're going to have to pay too. Yeah. So the earlier you start with kids, so if you start when they're 2 and, you know, you're intentional about spending good quality time together, and when you need a break, teaching them how to have quiet time in their room, or, you know, whatever it is that you need to do to function well as a family. But I think you can either endure the tantrums now and help them learn how to interact in appropriate ways, or, you know, you can deal with a lot more extreme things when they're older. But I think you kind of have to start with the end in mind. So there's going to be a cost either way, but it's a lot less if you start when they're young. So
yeah. You know, it's amazing what you both are saying, because as a parent, we tend to tell our kids, this is something that I always tell my little one, since he's six months, and he will just sometime at the beginning, he will just, if he tries to do something and he doesn't succeed, he will just start crying. And I'll be like, okay, little man, that doesn't work in this house. Because life will not give you anything on a silver platter. You're going to have to try. And let me tell you, any action that you will take as a little boy, growing up to a teenager to a man, will have consequences. So it's on you.
Yeah.
You want the good consequences? Do a good action. You want the bad consequences? Then you know what you are doing. And then be ready to assume. It's very important. You know, we say that to our kids, but here you are, Dr. Corrie and Ms. Burke. It seems like now the finger is on us parents, because we are basically the builder of those little humans that God gave us, bestowed us. And the way that we will handle it while they are small will bring either a good consequence, yes, in their life, but we're going to be the first one to reap those bad benefits. Because when you're having your kid's school calling you every day because your child misbehaves, when you are having young kids feeling now the jail in America and even around the world, you are the one who will be paying for it as a parent. So I like what Dr. Corrie said. Think about the end. That may really help some parents to I would say, review the priorities. Because yes, we are all in US and even around the globe. As parents, we want the best for our kids. We are fighting, we are toiling every day, you know, to make end meet. And sometimes we tend to forget, for whom are we doing this?
Yeah.
Our little one. Spend so many times, so many hours, so many weekends at the job, leaving those kids behind at home, and literally like missing on those. Last week we talked about it. That intimacy, that closeness, that need to be built when they are little, so that when they grow up, they can be your confidence. They can open up to you. We are losing on all of that. I love the way that this conversation is really going. And as I mentioned earlier on, Dr. Corrie Harris is the executive director of Boook Explorers, a children's literacy nonprofit based in Arlington, Texas. I would like us to watch the nonprofit and to see what it's all about before going on a short commercial break. Andy, can we please have that on the screen?
Hi, I am Dr. Corrie Harris. I'm the founder and executive director of Boook Explorers, a 501c3 children's literacy nonprofit. I want to give you an opportunity to hear from the parents of some of the kids in our program so you can hear for yourselves how our programs are impacting them.
Boook Explorers has been such a blessing to my whole family. I've got a 7-year-old daughter who is severely dyslexic, and she's really struggled learning and reading Miss Corrie has used a lot of unique techniques to teach her reading, and they've really helped her to really enjoy reading. It's really been a blessing just to see them blossom and also to see them desire to read and to enjoy it and to see how far it can take them.
So we have 3 kids, and all 3 of them are currently working through the program. And I think it impacted my son the most. He was already an avid reader, but we started seeing him veer off and not being as interested in reading and things of that nature outside of school. So within him starting the program, he has been reading every day, and I mean going through books left and right.
I have a daughter in the reading program. Her name is Ruby. She loves to read. She loves to come into Miss Corrie's class, and she is reading at a kindergarten level, and she's only 5 years old. So I'm very impressed. She's made a lot of progress over just a little less than a year.
We just moved to the US 6 months ago. It was really hard for her to learn English at first, but ever since she started Boook Explorers, it has helped her a lot with her English, with her reading skills, with her speaking skills and vocabulary. She gives me summaries in English, and that makes me really happy because I just see a lot of improvement in little time, and we've been blessed with that.
I love this. I love this. You know, I would like to piggyback on some of the comments from some parents. Let's start with the last mom. And from the way that she was talking, I could relate to her because I could tell she's an immigrant. And Dr. Corrie explained a little bit to us. I know I didn't plan to ask you this question, but we really want to get some tips that you may want to give to us parents from the diaspora. I'm sure you and Miss Burke have seen that when our kids, even though they are born here, in her case, her child wasn't even born here. But nevertheless, whether they are born here or overseas, because we are basically first-generation immigrants, our kids sometimes can have a little bit more difficulty in adjusting to the American culture. Maybe some tips could help from you and Ms. Burke. I will let you start first, Dr. Corrie.
Yeah. You know, I think it is very, I went to, so I was a student in South Africa when I was a kid. So I went to my second language too. So I think that actually helps me because I understand what it's like to try and read in your second language. I think something that is really helpful is, you know, surrounding yourself with good language. So I know, like, I have some parents who maybe they can't actually read or speak a whole lot in English. But something you could do is you could listen to books together. You could go to the library and there's books you can check out and you can listen and read along in the story. Audible is like a great resource. LibriVox is free and it has lots of good resources on there. But I think just going to the library and reading along and listening is going to help because that's going to help both of you know kind of what English syntax sounds like, kind of the rhythm and the cadence and the pronunciation. And the other thing I think is just giving time and lots of practice. So I think with especially the kiddos that English is their second language, you know, just having lots of conversations, I think is going to help them a lot. And then practicing reading a lot or practicing vocabulary. Like when you're looking at books together, asking, hey, do you know what that is? And giving them a chance to be like, oh, no, I don't. And just creating a safe space for them to be like, yeah, I don't know what that is. And the other thing is, I think, don't overcorrect. Sometimes, you know, some kids have a really hard time, say that ED ending, how sometimes it's a duh and sometimes it's a tuh, you know, if it's not your native language, sometimes figuring that out is really tricky. And I mean, I think learning the reading rules is helpful, but also I think sometimes kids just need some time. So you correct sometimes, and I mean, like sometimes, you know, using her instead of him, or, you know, those things were. But I think just being aware of the child's, you don't want to demoralize them. So I think giving them time and space, and maybe picking one thing at a time that you're working on. So if you're working on using the correct pronouns, then focus on using the correct pronouns, and then kind of mostly lay off of the other stuff, and just give them space to develop, if that makes sense.
You know, before I let Miss Burke add to what you said, two things that one of them that I feel like I'm guilty of. But the first, one of the first things that you said, among many that you just said, is reading children books. Believe it or not, 21 years ago when I moved to the US, I came from my graduate school, so I was like, okay, I'm going straight to the graduate school. And here they are telling me, no, you have to go back to English 101. I'm like, for what? I wasn't happy because that was like, first of all, paying money for it, while I'm taking, you know, classes in Africa. I even passed some, you know, the language skill test, but the university was like, nope, you gotta take that 101 class. And the 101 English class, believe me or not, the professor, she had us watch cartoons. She had us read children's books. And I'm like, is she for real? I'm 27. And she's making me watch cartoon. But she had to really explain to us that this is the beginning of any foreigner to learn the language. Because first of all, you will develop your vocabulary, and also the accents. It's been 21 years. I think I gave up. I don't think this French accent will go away. But it's amazing that you speak
English though.
Yeah, because you know, it's amazing because my son, sometimes when we read together, he will look at me and say, "Speak English, mom." I'm like, "I'm speaking English." I'm like, "Really? You were just born and I've been here for anyway." But when you talk about give them,
he doesn't know how good he has it.
Exactly. So, but you know, you just say something. Your last word, you give them time. I'm guilty of that. I'm not gonna lie. Because before, you know, putting him into Miss Burke school, I was like, okay, you know, let's do some reading. And within 5 minutes, I would just be like, didn't we just go through this yesterday? Why?
Yeah, it takes usually on average it takes about 100 times. So if you see a new word, about 100.
Oh wow.
So so I think, you know, I think most people, you know, for them, it's already become automatic. Their neurocircuitry is already built. And so they don't realize that if it's new, they have to build all of those neural pathways. So it takes about 100 times on average. So that means for some kids, it's going to take a little less. For some kids, it's going to take a little more. But that's perfectly normal to take about 100 times.
Wow. This is great information because truly, when he started at Miss Burke School Academy, within a month, I saw a big change. And there was no more fight when it's time to read. Because I'd be like, okay, today 20 minutes reading. But that 20 minutes will just, you know, cut short to 5 because I'd be like, okay, you know, I don't have patience for this because we went through yesterday. You know, this is amazing what you're saying. Like for me to hear that at least 100 times an average, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's truly a big deal. And I hope that parents, especially from the diaspora, are taking note on what we are talking about here. Miss Burke, I will let you add maybe to what Dr. Corrie said.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the things she said. I think the biggest thing, the only thing I can really add to is just the time, just giving them the space and the time to acclimate and to adjust. And for them to kind of learn the culture, because language is also culture too. So I know with your son, you know, we noticed like he's definitely got some different cultures. So just giving him the space and the time to be him, you know, and to be able to, for us to adapt to him and him to adapt to us. It's just taken some time, and it's okay. The time it's good. It's healthy. It's healthy for him to play with students learn how do they play versus how am I used to playing, and then how can we play together.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to take a short commercial break, and we will be back in 1 second. Andy? We are back. Dr. Corrie, many children don't like reading, despite all the benefit that we talked about last week. Why is that?
Well, I think we already talked about one of the reasons with technology and too much screen time. For some kids, learning to read is really hard work, and most of us are not inborn with a love for hard work. So I think for a lot of kids, you need to kind of figure out what motivates them and what drives them in order to kind of figure out what's gonna help them overcome that hurdle of the hard work of learning to read in order for them to find the pleasure in reading. Yeah. So so for a lot of kids, I think it's just a lot of work. And especially if you don't come from a family where they've been read to a lot and they don't have a great vocabulary to start with, not only are they having to learn how all the phonics, but they're facing a lot of new words that they've never heard of. So they're not really understanding the vocabulary of what's going on in the story. Because a lot of the pleasure is derived from, being able to get the jokes or, fall in love with the characters. So answer your question?
Sorry?
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And let's get to Miss Burke. My child is hooked to electronic or tablets. How can I make them to read instead?
That is the answer is really, really difficult because I am a cold turkey type of person. And I think you should just break it cold turkey and go through the initial screaming and yelling. It lasts much shorter than if you drag it out and you're like, okay, only an hour today, only 30 minutes today. And when it's not there, believe it or not, they get so bored that they're like, okay, I'll pick up a book. And they start flipping through the pictures and suddenly they're inquisitive about it and curious about it and they're engaged in it. But it takes that alone time. It takes that detoxing and, if we can say it's breaking the addiction, they're going through withdrawals and they're just crazy. Yeah. But if you can go through that crazy stage, it gets so much better and they start reading. There's been plenty of parents that have had that testimony where we've had them sit down and we've had a discussion with them about the iPad and what's going on at home and how much screen time they're getting, and parents took it away, and shortly after the students are reading and they're back to their same old self, sweet and kind and loving kids, and they're not crazy, but it does it tends to make them disrespectful, disobedient, very, very difficult to work with, but when you take it away, miraculously they're easygoing, they're sweet, they're helpful. It's wow. Different kid is hidden in this monster who's addicted to this drug. So
this is amazing. And of course, this is going to lead us to the topic of how parents could make their kids to love reading. This question will be for both of you, starting with Dr. Corrie. How to get your child to love reading? Because I'm sure many parents will be like, okay, They are talking and talking. We've been listening to the three of them for the past 20 minutes. Give me tips, show me how to make my child to love reading. So,
yeah, I think that's going to vary so much from child to child. My little next door neighbor, when I was in grad school, she was very dyslexic. So, sitting down to do a worksheet or something like that was just not going to happen. But she would cook with me, and she would sound out the words. She could get egged. So I think some of it is kind of figuring out the kiddo. Some kids like to play games. So there's all kinds of literacy games. So maybe you read a book and then we can play a literacy game. Or for other kids, they're very driven by, wanting to go to Chuck E. Cheese or something like that. And, if you get, 100 stickers on your chart, we'll go to Chuck E. Cheese. Or, different kids are different. But you just kind of have to be a student of your child. And figure out what is it that's going to help them move the next step. It's probably not going to happen all overnight. I had to learn that with my little neighbor. I so wanted to help her, but I just kind of had to be like, okay, she'll cook with me, and that's a start,
Yeah. I like that. Basically, in doing that, the child is loving doing the reading without thinking that it's an effort, like Miss Burke talked about multiple times. Yeah, I see. So, Miss Burke, any technique that anything that a parent can do to make the child to love reading, on top of what Dr. Corrie said?
I do. I agree with Dr. Corrie that it's going to vary with different kids, but I think the one universal thing that parents can do is they can start reading first. Reading in front of your child, having books all over the house, just creating like an environment of reading. My story is I was very dyslexic as a kid. I didn't read at all. Like, I think my mom read most of my books in junior high and high school. I think I read a book in high school, but like she really kind of just told me what the book was about, and I would, answer the questions. I wasn't a good reader, but my mom was an avid reader, and so she would go through the Stephen King books, the big, thick Stephen King books, in like 2 days. And so she had this bookshelf. She had like 2 different bookshelves, but they were completely full of books that she had read. And so when I would see her in her spare time, I would always see her reading. And so as I grew, I wanted to be like that. I wanted that hunger for reading. I just didn't have it. I wasn't hungry to read, but I wanted it because her vocabulary was big, and I just wanted it. And so consequently, I have turned into a reader. I don't watch TV. I don't like TV, but I love to read. And so I think that the culture is so important, and seeing what parents do. Like, parents, you are really the driving force. So what you do in front of your kids, that's really what they're going to pick up. It doesn't matter what you say. Like, you can say, yeah, I want you to be a reader. I want you to read, go and read, go and read, go and read. But if they never see you pick up a book, they may not be an avid reader. They may not really care for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you guys talk about kids that are different, but I would like us to take a pause here and discuss about that. Is there a different technique for children with needs to make them to love reading? Dr. Corrie, you are talking about your neighbor, and basically you figured out that, okay, bringing her into the kitchen can distract her from the tension of maybe thinking like, oh, okay, because I'm sure maybe that child, whenever she sees you coming in the past, you'll be like, oh God, she's coming for me to read. And now you find a different way to not make her, pay more attention to the reading. But in fact, that was your goal, but you have to work around it. So let's talk about children with needs. If a parent has a kid that is in need, how could they, what kind of technique could they use to make that child to love reading?
Yeah. I think it's going to be different depending on the need, but I think if you have a child with special needs, it can be really helpful just to figure out, for one, what the need is. If your child is autistic or dyslexic, or there's a range of needs where you're going to need a different kind of teaching in order for you to be successful, because your brain just works differently. I think getting some testing done can be super helpful, because then you're going to know because there's tons of help for kids with dyslexia, and there's tons of help for kids with autism, or ADHD, or the spectrum of different needs. But I think kind of knowing what it is that that your child, the difference in your child, because then because a lot of times, like my neighbor, I think some of the reason why cooking was so much better for her is because she felt like a failure over and over and over in that school. So when we sat down, it was like when we sat down to read, already she had this mindset of like, I can't do this. Yeah. But she loved eating with me. So it was helpful because she was willing to try. But I think, if kids aren't given the resources they need, they start thinking, I'm not intelligent, or, things like that. So I think just figuring out what is the way that my child thinks differently, and then helping your child in the way that difference kind of requires. That way they can start thinking of it as a positive thing, like Walt Disney, like Steve Jobs, lots of like highly successful people are dyslexic because they're very creative, because their neurocircuitry works differently than neurotypical people. And so just helping kind of figure out what that is goes a long way in helping figure out what they need.
Wow, I like what you're just saying, because it was like almost like making them relate to role models.
Yeah.
Wow. And Miss Burke, I know that you talk about your own experience when you were a child, and here you are today, basically an owner of an academy. This is a perfect example of telling parents with kids with special needs that there is hope.
There is hope. There is hope.
Hope, and of course, you both have been saying that since last week. It doesn't happen by mistake. It's not magic. Work, yeah, there is work that needs to be done. But I would just like, for you to share your own experience, Miss Burke, growing up. How was it? And how were you able basically to overcome this to the point like now you are teaching children? You are basically pouring knowledge into kids, and I'm sure you must have children with special needs at your school. So and I'm pretty sure you can definitely relate to them. Just tell us a little bit, because we really want to, this talk show is also to give hope to parents and even hope to children. And I hope really that this talk show, they will take time to watch it with the kids, so that they can see that anything is possible. So over to you, Miss Burke.
Yeah, so as a kid, I really struggled with reading. I hated reading. I'm a sibling of two brothers, and they're both very smart, very good readers. And I just happen to not be. And so going through school, I think you hide it. You don't want people to know, so you don't ever read in front of people. You excuse yourself when reading is being present. But it takes a great deal of work to read for someone that's dyslexic. So like my daughter, she's probably as bad as I was, but so like when she's reading, like it's twice or 5 times harder for her to read something than it is for any other kid in the room. And so she's going to be fighting to read it, as opposed to someone who can read it very easily and doesn't take a lot of thought, whereas she's got to really deeply think about every word and every letter, which is very hard. And so you do need to find some satisfaction in it. You do need to find a personal reason why. I think overcoming it was, it took a lot of work, but it was a choice. At the end of the day, it's a choice. Because I saw my mom read, I wanted to be that way. And so I was determined to read and to read well, or to at least become a reader. So I read books that I maybe would not have been interested in before, but I read it because I knew I just wanted to be a reader. So just you have to get to a place where you make the choice because you want to be a reader. And so I think fostering that here is the goal for me, because I get that it's got to be the child's choice, especially if you've got special needs. It doesn't matter what the need is. It can be autism, it can be dyslexic. You still have to make the choice to fight through it and to find it in your heart, to push past discomfort, the frustration, and to overcome it. Ultimately overcome it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burke. This next question is going to be for the two of you. Okay, let's say as a parent, I followed all your advices and my child has finally started reading. Then down the road, my child is no longer interested in reading. What can I do? Because that happened. I can give you an example with my little one. He came, I think, at the beginning of, right before summer break. Oh, Miss Corrie is having a reading contest. I'm going to sign up for it. I'm like, oh, okay. Sign up. And first week, we brought home, I think it was 10 books. So that weekend, he literally read, I think, 16 books. He read all the books that we borrowed at school. Then he wanted to pick up all his other books in his own library. So it was like, okay, I was like, wow, this is great, So we had the momentum going for like 3 weeks, and I think he was burned out. Because I think in 3 weeks, he read, 45 or 46 books.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, then he was like, I'm no longer interested. I'm like, okay, it doesn't work like that. First of all, I didn't force you to sign up. You sign up for this. And you're not going to quit in the middle. So my way to keep him reading was like, well, we don't know. Maybe the other at school are reading more books today. Then he'll be like, okay, then I will read too. But, it's hard because you really have to use your brain and then find something for that child to not drop out of that passion. So, Dr. Corrie, I will start with you first. What can I do if the same child comes back and says, I'm no longer interested?
Yeah, I'm always asking myself that question. I'm thinking about the fall right now. We've competed on teams this summer, and the people that every time they read a book, they put a marble in their jar for their team and they're competing as a team. And for a lot of kids, that's been really motivational. But I'm always kind of thinking about what's next, because for a lot of kids, until they have fallen in love with reading, they need some sort of external motivation. So I think where I would start is just trying to find a book series that your kids really like. So kind of exploring if they're not liking that. I think there's value in finishing what you start, but also I don't finish every book that I start. I go to the library and be like, oh, the first chapter was good, but after that it went downhill. So, if a kid starts a book and they're like, I don't really like this, I'm like, okay, pick a different one. One kid this morning picked 3 different books before she found the one that she was interested in. But then she enjoyed it. So I think sometimes it just takes a little exploration, and then, connecting maybe an activity with, one of my friend's kids loves insects. So they go to the library and they read books about insects, and then they go on hunts for their insects,
Oh, wow.
So, I
like that.
Every week they have a theme, and they go to the library and they pick books based on their theme. And then they have some sort of activity that's connected with it. There's lots of, for some kids, my nieces and nephews really love rock climbing, that kind of thing. And so they will earn points to do their activity that they want to do. But different kids are different, but find what motivates your kid. But a lot of kids need some external motivation at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. What about you, Miss Burke? Any tips to keep that child going and then keep on nurturing that new passion?
I like the subject matter, finding the subject matter that they really enjoy. And even if you start with like more picture books, or like if we're drifting away and you use some picture books that have the things that excite them, that'll usually kind of draw them back
Yeah,
into the passion of reading.
they have great vocabulary in picture books too.
Yeah, and great for creative for thinking, imagining, and
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that.
I like that. I like that. Definitely. Speaking about the summer reading context, Andy, can we please have it on the screen? Dr. Corey, please tell us more about that summer reading context. Is it nationwide?
It's available to everybody nationwide, but I'd say the majority of the kiddos are competing just in this DFW area. And it sounds like your son might be taking the contest. I don't know.
Well, we don't know because, like I said,
But, it ends August 5th, though. So it's not too late to start reading, but you're a little late in the game. We also have little sticker charts that you can find online. And if you turn in one of those sticker charts every time you read for 15 minutes, you can turn it in for a prize. So even if you don't win the reading contest, you can still participate and get a small prize.
That's great. That's absolutely great. And I think other parents, even though it's not worldwide or nationwide, because our talk show is really viewed now around the globe, that this can also give ideas to parents and other schools on some of the tips that you guys are doing. So yeah, absolutely. And we are at the end of our talk show today. Miss Burke and Dr. Corey, respectively, what would be your final word to parents still struggling to help their kids love reading? Dr. Corey, maybe Miss Burke first.
If the kiddo is still struggling, maybe you got to loosen up a little bit, give them some slack, let them have some successes, feed them small successes to kind of reel them in. But it's a journey. It's not a quick race. It's a long marathon, and you're just grooming. You're imparting. You're trying to create the idea and the culture of loving to read. So you don't want it to be strenuous or frustrating. You want to take those things away.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Miss Burke. Dr. Corey?
When I fostered a little girl, I mentioned we learned to cook. Part of how I learned that was I realized I was feeling miserably and it was creating a lot of tension in our relationship. And so I actually found someone to work with her. And I learned a lot of things from her because she was getting a lot of things out of her that I wasn't. And so kind of like Ms. Burke was saying, she learned like ways to take the tension out, and she'd make it very active, like lots of movement. And she was having playing games and stuff like that. And so sometimes, your parent is the most important person in your child's life. But it doesn't mean that you have to be the only one investing in your child. So if you're kind of hitting a roadblock, maybe you're like, hey, I've got a friend, maybe we can do a parent, like a switch, and get a fresh perspective.
I like that. I definitely like that. And, even with me, it wasn't intentional, but definitely, like I said earlier on, when he started going to Miss Burke's school and he was in your class, I saw it. I literally saw it. He will come and then start reading on his own. Then now when we are reading, instead of just 10 minutes that will turn into 2 minutes of frustration, we read for like sometimes 20 minutes. And I see what you meant. Yeah, definitely taking the tension away. And sometimes just maybe having somebody in the middle. I love that. Thank you so much, Miss Burke, Dr. Corey, for your time. This was a great debate, and I really hope that this will help many parents to get into this wonderful journey of reading. First of all, reading to the kids while they are small, and then keep on nurturing the love that the kids has developed. And of course, like you both said, also emulate the love of reading in front of our children. Basically, be an example instead of just telling them, do it, be a doer. So thank you so much again for your time. And I wish you good luck with school starting. I know that you guys are getting ready to wrap up with summer and then just get started with school. So thank you so much again for your time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
It was a great pleasure. It was a great pleasure. Thank you so much. And precious women of valor, precious men of valor, we are at the end of this talk show today. Thank you so much for staying with us. Please don't forget to share. And again, those in the DFW area, by the way, Dr. Corrie actually give a reading class to Miss Burke Academy. So
yes.
Great way, to just have your kids linked to great resources and people who are really passionate about what they are doing. I'm not saying this just to say it. I've seen it. So again, thank you for staying with us, and I will see you next week, Wednesday, for our monthly Inspiration Leader show. Thank you so much, and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye.